Hello, everybody. We are here starting a new workshop on Planetiers. Thanks a lot for being here with us. We have an amazing team leading this workshop. I'm going to make a small introduction of them. Um, 1 second. So we have with us Lin Zhang and Diego Soroa. Um, Lin is a director of systemic innovation coach at Thrive Together. She is co-founder and CEO of Natural Step China. She is a leader who tax technology as one first-line R&D engineer and chip designer in telecommunication and semiconductor industry in Sweden. She worked in the digital world for almost 10 years, and she led R&D innovation projects across multi-sites within Ericsson in Sweden, Germany, and China. After that, Lin started her startup path by first joining a Swedish and Silicon Valley semiconductor startup with disruptive new technology called Pact Architects, AB, as VP of Corporate Development. Lin is also a lady who brings changes. As a business-minded engineer, after she became a mother, Lin is the co-founder and determined to bring and establish the China company of the Natural Step, world first and most international sustainable advisor organization with over 30 years of experience helping organizations and individuals understand and accelerate the meaningful transformation towards sustainability. For the last 7 years, Lin and her team have been coaching businesses across various industries such as fashion, chemistry, mobility, and food on how to boost innovation and increase profits while being more sustainable. Our clients vary from Fortune 500 European brands, China leading O2O food retailer, to large manufacturers with 5,000 plus employees to local family-owned dyeing mill. Lin was also featured as one of the superwomen changing our world for the better by China Green Initiative. Coming from the digital world, Lin recognizes the power being digital in the Exponential after she became the first Chinese certified EXO sprint coach globally. Lin and the Natural Step China have developed Exponential Sustainability Transformation Framework, TM pending, so trademark pending, aiming to deliver value from the overlap of sustainability and digitalization. They already have leading business adoption, their model in transformations including Covestro and Volvo Car. I would call your attention that this knowledge, as Lin puts it on this bio, is unique. This combination of the Natural Step, a leading framework in Sweden, born in Sweden, and went to the world to really define in a scientific way what are the limits, the environmental and social limits for a business to be completely involved by these limits, and at the same time accelerate exponentially with the knowledge of the the exponential transformation and acceleration of organizations, okay, by OpenExO, which is like which spun off from Singularity University. So you have like maybe the two best frameworks in the world coming together to play together, and that is like a quite unique in the world thing that we are presenting at Planetiers. Now turning to Diego Soroa. Diego is a Spanish award-winning innovator focused on disruption, who inspires and advises some of the largest organizations around the world to design and implement disruptive innovation strategies for various industries, including finance, pharma, insurance, transportation, construction, engineering, etc. Diego Soroa has founded 4 startups and won the Entrepreneur of the Year awards in 2006 and the Global Impact Competition Award winner in 2012. He graduated from the Singularity University Global Solutions Program and became an ambassador of their think tank. Diego is a member of the foundational group behind the Exponential organization's movement and soon became the lead trainer and one of the most celebrated coaches, both at OpenExO and Rise.works, performing in over 35 EXO international sprints. He is also an executive coach for global companies. He is an adjunct professor of Instituto de Empresa, i.e. Masters, and a recognized speaker on disruption. Sorry, I lost it. On disruption and the exponential transformation. Diego has developed several models to anticipate and to create disruption, and he is a certified biomimicry specialist. So here also a connection with the world of sustainability, because biomimicry is about innovation that replicates, emulates the laws of nature. He is also an awarded tech artist, architect, and father of 3. So amazing father and mother coming together, really working on the worlds, on the confluence, on the convergence of the worlds of sustainability and technology. Let's hope you have an amazing session as we have thought of it. Thank you, Diego, for the paper.
Yeah, it's a magic trick. Something happened. I think the perspective on my camera changed magically. So you're going to see my side apparently instead of my front, but I'll try to fix it as Lin gives us the welcome. Lin, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Antonio, and thanks everyone for joining us today. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going to happen for today's 2 hours and also tomorrow's 2 hours. And I have something. Please let me know if anyone sees anything. Okay.
I see, Lin.
Okay, great. So welcome everyone, the Planetiers World Gathering. And for these 2 days, we're going to talk about transforming towards sustainability and also leveraging exponentials. And why do we talk about it this way? Because basically we believe any organizations that's in the world, including even individuals, that are surfing 2 tsunamis for the future, or to be future fit. And if you want to be future fit, at least you need to be aware of those 2 waves. The first wave comes from sustainability, and it mainly comes from the current business practice or the unsustainability of current business practice, which cannot really last anymore. And it has already from a good to have to basically on survival level. And the second wave comes from the converging exponential technologies over years, and including AI, robotics, and biology, etc., 3D printing. So basically all the technology has an exponential curve when they develop. And when you see the future and when you plan strategically for the future, those 2 parts are what you need to see. And today we're going to talk about how we think you need to see those 2 parts married together. So from my point of view, sustainability is about effectiveness. It's about creating positive impact. It's about to get your organization or your business on the right direction. And digitalization and exponentials, it's about efficiency. And how do we make the change fast? And how do we make it 10 times faster or even 100 times faster? And given the nature of those 2 bubbles, what one should remember is when you create change, you need to take care of those 2 sides in the right order. First, you need to take care of the effectiveness part, which is the sustainability part. And then once you are sure that you are in the right direction, and then you plug on the you leverage the exponential part and to make yourself change 10 times or 100 times faster to be the new paradigm shifter. So as Antonio says, the change comes from effectiveness and efficiency. And as Antonio says, and for the effectiveness part, the sustainability part, we're going to talk about the natural step frameworks, which is still the only science-based sustainability frameworks till now. And also, we're going to talk about the exponential and 11 attributes and how to apply that into the sustainability transformation to make it faster to move. So this is what's going to happen. And first, we talk about what's going to happen. And then I will give it back to Diego, and he will introduce you on the exponential part. Then after that, I will talk about the sustainability part. Then we end as a group assignment or individual assignment, it's up to you, about sustainability-driven transformation. And tomorrow, we recap a little bit, and also we talk about why it's this sequence and what can be wrong if you do the wrong sequence. And then Diego will talk about the attributes of the exponential organizations, and then we take what transformation solution and actions that you have come up with today and apply those attributes into the transformation and make it exponential. So these are what's going to happen for these 2 days. And I hope all of you enjoy it. Okay, so Diego, should I give it back to you?
All right, thank you very much. Can everybody hear me? Yes, great. So now I'm going to try sharing my screen and hopefully we'll get on the right track. Please let me know now if you can share, see my screen. Hold on just a second, something's happened here. Okay. All right, so as I'm trying to recuperate my screen, something's happened here. I really want to welcome everyone. I think it's a real pleasure to have you here. We are gathering in a small group today. I believe, because I'm the host now, that we are up to 17 participants. And so that makes it really cozy and comfortable for having conversations. This is precisely what we want to have today. We want to have a conversation with you around that combination of concepts, the concept of digitization and the concept of sustainability. Actually, I'm going to try to push you further beyond digitization. I want to take you all the way to disruption. So digitization is about incremental efficiency. Then we have revolutionary transformations, and then we have the disruptive transformation. That is where we want you to be thinking of. That is the kind of mindset that at the end of this conference, at the end of this workshop, and hopefully by the end of this little talk, we want you to be thinking of. And then we'll be trying to combine those two terms. Can we disrupt what is not sustainable? And for example, how do we disrupt pollution or waste? And now that we are starting to understand some of the concepts beyond disruption, we're starting to understand how disruption works, and we can start emulating the unicorns and applying all of the logics and all of the tricks that unicorns are using to grow their impact at exponential scale, to leverage abundances, to scale impact, and ideally try to apply them to our sustainability goals, but always to our objective, but always within the limits of the boundaries of sustainability. So that is the bet, that is the purpose of this workshop, and for that we're going to have, as I was saying, a conversation. Lin is going to be covering the sustainability part. I'm going to be covering the principles of exponentiality. There's 11 attributes that we're going to be covering extensively tomorrow. And we're going to talk about other tools in the EXO booklet. EXO stands for exponentiality, and that is a term that we use systematically, both at EXO, Exponential Organizations, and also at Singularity University, to try to make sense of the accelerated changes that we are seeing across companies, across societies, and across the world, actually. So we're going to run a couple of exercises. Today, we're going to run a very simple exercise in which we're going to try to imagine beyond our current limits of imagination. We're going to try to go beyond our certainties and do some intentional prospective thinking of what the future could look like, and more specifically, what we want the future to look like, okay? And for that purpose, we're going to start with a case study that we have proposed. That is mobility. And why have we chosen mobility? Well, we figured mobility could work very well, pretty much for everyone. Mobility is horizontal to all of our operating systems, to transportation. Mobility is horizontal to the economy overall, to urbanism, to tourism. So we figure it will also be quite easy to detect opportunities and to come up with new ideas on problems and how to try to fix them. Plus, there's so many things affecting mobility today. The pandemics, the economics, the technologies, the global trends, that our certainties, our intuitions regarding mobility are somewhat outdated, or that is what we're going to try to prove today. And we're going to try to do it collectively, to collectively update and revisit our intuitions, our desired futures through the lens of technology, through the lens of exponential change, and tomorrow through the lens of exponential attributes that we observe in the unicorns. But that's tomorrow. Today, as I was saying, we're going to start with exponential technologies, and we're going to run this little exercise after Lin gives us the boundaries, the sustainability boundaries, okay? So I will start now speaking about technologies, and very interestingly, I cannot share my screen. So we are supposed to be masters of technologies here, but we are having the most basic problem. So please leave me just a second to try to share my screen, and hopefully I'll be able to get back to you in a second. Okay, so now, so this is the beginning, of course, and this was to justify that we're going to be choosing mobility. We already talked about this. And here is what I want to stop for a second. I want to make the point that technologies change everything. And for that, we have here a beautiful image of New York City, all right? This is in 1865. So technologies are typically frequently at the origin of all of the disruptive changes. Technologies have actually always been a fundamental driver of change. In this view of New York, we see how things used to be in the past before some technologies that changed everything. Not only did it change the solutions that we adopted in the city, but it even changed the very landscape of the city. Some of you might already be thinking, what those technologies can be. Actually, if we look at this image, we could think of just one technology that changed the vertical scale of the city. And that would be, of course, the elevator. Before the elevator, the city would only have like 3 stories, 4 maximum, right? And after the elevator in 1854, we gave, yes?
Hugo, can you hear me? Yeah, I think you probably have shared your desktop because we are not seeing the beautiful picture you have mentioned.
Oh, you haven't? All right, let me try again. Can you see the beautiful picture?
Yeah, yes.
So it is beautiful, isn't it? All right, so let's go back to our story here. So we have the profile of the city prior to 1854, and then we have a technology that changes everything. And we now, thanks to a technology, we have the vertical growth, the growth of the city in the vertical terms. We have a technology that single-handed created the high-rise building. That is the elevator, of course. And then we have another technology that single-handed created the urban sprawl, and that is, of course, the car. So we have 2 technologies that within 50 years were able to completely change the concept, the scale, and the dimensions of the city. And then we had yet another technology that created a substantial change on what we understand the city is. That is the magical pipe between the places, the telephone, which was actually not for mobility, but for communication. The telephone made many of the trips unnecessary and allowed the cities to grow even larger. So 3 technologies that had very relevant changes of our understanding of what the city is, what the city looks like, and how we experience the city. So if each one of those technologies was able to create such massive changes on the city, we could argue and understand that any substantial change in each one of those technologies will in the future imply huge changes, massive changes in the city, right? We see that those changes are actually happen. We see that we have now elevators that move horizontally, and we have cars that are starting to fly vertically too, right? So we have a combination of technology that would definitely create new typologies, and that would definitely change the way that we design the city. I am an architect. I'm always been passionate about the massive changes that we can bring to technology, but now for me it's really hard to keep up with all of the possibilities and all of the potential scenarios that we might be immersed of. And so that is exactly what we're going to start doing. I'm going to ask you to bear with me as I try to understand, for instance, what is the potential impact of this technology on the city. These arguably are cars that move vertically and horizontally. These are the drones, of course. So this is one of those technologies that supposedly is going to change absolutely everything. We have countless companies working on passenger drones. We have newcomers, like for example, Uber, or we have aviation companies like Boeing or Airbus, traditional companies, but also we have automotive companies like Hyundai. And we could argue that we are still not there yet, but we are starting to see like an eclosion, a boom of these initiatives all across the world, and actually all across industries, which is very interesting. So the drone might change everything. The drone actually might create a new dimension on top of the city, which is the air borough, right? We are used to physical spaces grounded to the land, grounded to air, and now we see that we might grow in another borough, which is the air, right? So again, we are not there yet, but a combination of technologies are suggesting that we are soon going to reach this new scenario. Of course, the technology that we depend most for drones is batteries, right? The energetic capability of the electric batteries, its autonomy is definitely a limiting factor of these passenger drones. And we have another technology that is very limiting here, which is the noise. Actually the danger and the noise that these drones make, they are still dangerous machines, but we are working towards completely silent machines, and hopefully we'll be able to reduce the danger with self-driving modes in the near future. So I'm not saying this is happening tomorrow, but this is a very plausible future that we definitely need to consider, and try to also understand the drone as a main driver of change in the city, and try to understand what potential impact it might have in our basic infrastructures. Because let's run a theoretical exercise. See, this is, I'm going to skip this real quick. There we go. So this is a drone, and we see now that the drones are able to carry massive amounts of weight. So we have, for example, in 2018, an industrial drone could carry more or less 150 kilos. And today we are at 220 kilos. So that means that every 2 years, more or less, the load capacity doubles, which means that in 3 years, they'll be able to lift a ton. 4 drones will be able to load, for example, an empty container, and in 5 more years, we'll have, if this trend continues, we'll have the ability to have 4 drones lifting 16-ton containers. That is exactly what some cranes do at the maritime port. That is exactly what they carry. So what I'm suggesting is that in 5 iterations, or maybe in 10 years from now, maybe cranes will not be essential in an industrial port. Or maybe the very concept of the industrial port will no longer be that relevant. Why? Because that interface role between the ship and the train might be solved by the drones. So that means that maybe we might be talking of the death of the ports. I don't know whether or not this is going to happen in the short or in the mid or in the long term. I do think that this definitely is worth pursuing, considering the massive investments that we are dedicating to ports infrastructure. So are we talking about the death of drones? I don't know, of the death of ports. I don't know. But there's another infrastructure yet that we could study through the lens of this exponential technology that is doubling its price performance every 18 months. And that is, of course, the airport. Why are airports at the edge of the city? Well, because they are, to some extent, violent, right? They make a lot of noise, they are dangerous, and the planes need to take off and lift in a horizontal manner. But that's not necessarily the case with drones. Drones can take off vertically, and drones do not require so much space. Actually, drones could be taking off from your facade, sorry, from your ceiling, from the ceiling in your building. So we might see that new buildings in the near future might be constructed or in the city to cover that need. So that would definitely decrease the need of the airports. And that is a possibility, probably, as I was saying before, not realistic until we have silent drones populating our skies, or unless we have, until we have like a growth of these depending technology, which is the battery, right? The electric battery. But again, we are seeing massive changes on the electric battery. So there's no reason why we shouldn't consider this trend will go on and on and on. And see, I'm talking here about technology as a major driver of change, and I'm suggesting that maybe technology will put in jeopardy some basic legacy infrastructures such as ports and airports. But instead of only looking at the technology, let's look at the business model and how the business model of some of these infrastructures might be changing. If we go to the airport, we'll realize that the business model of the airport is the mall at the airport. It's like a super mall in which you go waiting for your security clearance, you go waiting for your plane, and you have the ability to buy there, right, to consume. And that is basically the business model of the airport. But of course, we are seeing that inefficient wait is becoming more and more efficient, to the point that you can almost do today a segue towards your gate without even needing to stop at the entrance for security check, because we now have security systems that allow for seamless transition towards your gate. So it might not be here yet, but probably it'll be very hard to stop those efficiencies to be installed in our airport, because we'll be requiring them. So what would happen then to the airport? Probably that is another front that the airport and the typical typologies that we're going to be facing are going to need to be addressing in the near future. So I give you just a couple of examples of how things that we probably have in our minds for granted, like the airports and the ports, maybe just by means of using one technology completely in jeopardy. All right, so again, this is not a real scenario yet, but my understanding is we are tending towards that. This is the cost of the energy, and these scenarios that I described are massively energy dependent. But if we look at the trends regarding energies, regarding batteries, electric batteries and flight, we'll see that there is massive change happening, exponential growth, I would say, happening on the price performance of these electric batteries. It will most likely eventually become a commodity. So what kind of scenario, what kind of business, what kind of activities can be resist that new scenario in which we are massively, we have a massive access to abundant free energy? Thinking what you are doing today, what would happen? How would that be impacted with this scenario in which energy is completely free? So I don't know how that is going to look like, of course, but what I know is that, well, this is the exponential trend that I was describing on the sorry about the mistake here, the battery storage capacity globally. You cannot read it, but I know what I wrote. So you'll see here that there is an exponential trend. There is a massive change happening every year in this case. And again, no reason to think that this pattern will necessarily stop in the near future. So how do we make sense of one of these technologies? It's hard. It's really hard. And especially it is even harder when you consider that each one of these technologies that we could call a Gutenberg moment are converging into this perfect storm in which no longer do we have just one technology, but several technologies that are retrofitting themselves. They are converging and they are creating these massive uncertainty across activities. So these are times of uncertainties, and technologies and converging technologies are not helping. There's another thing that is not helping, which is the pace at which all this is happening. This is a representation of all of the human innovation from agricultural revolution to current days in a simplified way, of course. And you can see here that once we started once we start accumulating enough innovations, we'll see that the innovation itself becomes exponential too. The pace of change starts to accelerate exponentially. And we see that we have this exponentiality and this convergence simultaneously. So all of this justify that we have no idea what's going to happen in the future. We can decide to identify some driving forces, and we'll find a lot of them. This is the new abundance that I was describing, all the mega trends, all the technologies, all the new business models, etc. All of these drivers depending on which one we decide to pursue, which one we decide to focus on, we can combine in completely different scenarios. The beauty is that those scenarios and those futures or those future realities are pretty much dependent on our own efforts. I mean, the future is not something that happens to us. The future is something that we have agency on. So that is what we want to suggest, that, you know, it is something that we can start building. It is something that we can bet on, and it is something that depends on the fundamental bets that we start doing now, right? So let me give you another example of a technology that really is calling my attention. These self-driving cars. Of course, we are not in self-driving car level 5 yet. We are something around the level 3 in some cases, and probably will still be there for a while. That means that we do not have full self-driving autonomy yet. But we see that there is a fierce competition for this technology. And I also know that I tried it in first hand. Look at my face here. I look like a little stupid here. This was in Singularity University when I got to really experience firsthand this technology. It was really amazing. And this is some 8 years ago already. It was really amazing because in that control setting, the car was fully driving itself. It really is amazing. You have a reaction of what's going on here that actually is very frequent in these exponential technologies, because they challenge your intuitions. They seem that, you know, very close to magic, as McLuhan used to say, right? These technologies are just amazing. So how do we make sense of them? I don't know, but I really enjoy this idea of trying to understand what impact will a self-driving car have in the future of the city, in the way we design cities, the way we design this relationship between the block and the road, or the way we design parkings. Do we need parkings at all, etc.? So massive changes coming from these technologies. These, of course, a boom of companies now actually collaborating, which is a very interesting and new in this field of self-driving car. This is happening across technologies and across fields, these new collaboration. And we also, I wanted to stress that this technology, when it started in I think it was in 1998 or something, it was a very, very expensive project. Every single car, because of this LiDAR technology that is mounted on top of it, was like some around the $300K. So of course it was a very interesting experiment, but not something that could eventually come accessible for end consumers. And then we saw the exponential pattern starting to affect the cost of the LiDAR, that enabling technology. In 2009, the LiDAR was around $75K in dollars. In 2017, it dropped down to 50, and now it's around $5. There's even people like Elon Musk suggesting that we no longer even need LiDARs at all. We can solve it with some sort of combinations of cameras, etc. So that is what's going on, and that is what's making these self-driving promise accessible for everyone whenever we finally meet it, right? So exponential technologies are creating new problem spaces, and this is an example of a company that I work in firsthand with. Racine is a company from South America, based in Mexico, but they are operating and they are serving clients worldwide. They serve Maserati, they serve the majority of the pickup trucks in the United States and South America, and also they serve Tesla. So I worked with them during 10 weeks in one of these EXO sprints, and we came up with amazing redesigns of their suspension mechanisms. That's what they do, suspensions for cars, etc. And we were able to reduce the weight. Using new design approaches, we were able to reduce the weight in over 10% of those components. That was amazing, but that wasn't actually the major breakthrough. The major breakthrough was understanding that there was a new problem that they needed to solve for. And the problem was the noise, or more specifically, the lack of noise, because the engines now being electric, the noise was absent. So the little noises that those suspension mechanisms would make in the past, the little squeaky, were no longer covered by the engine. So now they needed to identify the problem and solve for a new problem. See, this is what's happening with the technologies. They are bringing completely new problems. What happens in the self-driving mode if you have an accident? Who pays for that? Well, no one so far, because the companies, the insurance companies are not going to have access to the self-driving algorithms, right? So nobody was covering for this until the people from these automotive industries and truck making industries and transportation industries realized this and starting to say, like Martin Nussen, the Volvo president, said recently, that they were going to start covering for the insurance of the cars when they were driving and self-driving. So they will accept all liability when our cars are in autonomous mode. A problem that is brought by a new technology that nobody else was solving, and that was forcing companies to jump from one arena to the next. So this is the kind of mindset that we need to have. We need to forget about the industries, we need to forget about boundaries, and we need to forget about little increases of efficiency, because what we have ahead of us is a massive disruption of our problems, of our solutions, of the problem spaces, and the possibilities that we have in front of us, right? So we need to change our understanding of what the job is, what the job to be done. This is Clayton Christensen, the father of the concept of disruption, suggesting that we focus on the job to be done. I'm going to give you a very quick example of how the job to be done is changing in another industry. Everybody knows the example of Kodak, of course. Everybody knows, and probably some of you have used these Kodak, these films, limited exposures. You'll take them very carefully, 12, 24, or 36 exposures, because it took a long time for you to receive them back and they were expensive. The problem was around the scarcity of the film, right? The scarcity of the pictures. And now we have the opposite problem. Now we have infinite structure exposures thanks to this camera. This was the origin, right? And now we have infinite exposure. I've tweaked here the symbol to make an infinite exposure to represent the new reality, right? The problem that we have now is that we take so many pictures that we don't know what to do with them. We have a problem of abundance of pictures. And so the old companies that were trying to solve the problem of scarcity around the pictures were not fit to solve this problem. They didn't realize that the problem has changed, so they went in comparison. Well, they're not fully bankrupt now, but Kodak came down from a dominant position in the market to being second to just a startup with 13 employees when it was acquired. So why? Because they had the right mindset, they had the right understanding, and they knew what kind of problem they need to solve in the future. So from scarcity to abundance, that is a new problem that we need to solve. And that is also a new problem that we need to be solving in the context of mobility, in the context of our cities here. I don't know what's going to happen when we have full automation, but that definitely will impact us. I don't know what's going to happen when our lives increasingly go to this virtual reality, but that is definitely going to happen. Just think about these massive experiments that we are running all together here. We're no longer walking in physical, we're walking in digital. And after 100 years experiment, we are seeing that there isn't so much of a problem on doing it this way. So I don't know exactly which one is the driver that you can see the more relevant, but there are so many things that I want that could be happening and that I want you to consider, even if it's for later to discard them. Space touring. If I talk to you about space touring, you're going to think I'm crazy. I mean, it's really probably far beyond in our minds. Or is it? Because then we see that, in the past, that's what we thought. In 1936, the New York Times said a rocket will never be able to leave the Earth's atmosphere. That is just impossible. And only 6 years later, we had the first rocket reaching the space. So, see, we have a systematic deception by people that really, really are very clever, but just cannot see it coming. Why? Because our minds are not fine-tuned to understanding the exponentiality, the exponential pace of change. This is what we've seen in only 100 years. From the first cars, from Ford, etc., to having a car in the moon or in Mars, etc. So this is what we are. This is where we are. And it is true that we haven't been there for a while, but now there is a massive explosion of commercial companies that are wanting to go back to the moon. Right? The space is growing. I mean, it looks like it's going to be actually crowded in the near future because there's so many people wanting to go there. So we have a lot of ventures that are failing, a lot of ventures from Israel, from United States. I mean, there's a lot, but we'll see that why there's so many. It's not only countries that are doing this, it's also companies such as Elon Musk company or such as Jeff Bezos' companies. So now the barriers of entry to these technologies are changing. Now, as Naveen Jain says, companies are doing what only countries used to do, and individuals and startups at their homes are doing what only large companies used to do. The barrier of entry is lowering massively, and as I was saying, we will see a lot of them fail, but they keep on trying. I mean, that is the approach to innovation. We will see also many of these promises succeed in the near future. So maybe we'll start to consider that going to Mars or going to the moon or just going for a flight around the globe might be a possibility for us in terms of mobility, in terms of tourism, right? So if you think about it, The Martian, this amazing movie about going to Mars, is actually more expensive to make than sending a probe to Mars. The Indian government sent a probe to Mars that was cheaper than this movie. So it's kind of amazing to see how things are changing. As I was saying, lowering the barriers of entry. This is last year's Black Friday. So I found a hashtag that said Space Black Friday, and I found that there are satellite components on sale. So see, when you see this happening, there's a trend here. There's something that definitely should call our attention. The access to space is democratizing. Well, maybe that's a lot to say, but definitely it's changing. And there's many companies that are boldly proposing the starships landing in the moon in 2022. So is this real? Not today, probably not today, but if we are starting to think what mobility or what the future of tourism might be 5 years from now, maybe these kind of technologies should be incorporated into our briefings, because otherwise, probably once they are accepted by everybody else, once we are there in terms of the technology, if we want to join, we'll be massively late. So these are just some fun images to justify that now we're even growing plants and flowers in the space. And if you don't want to take a spaceship, maybe you can take one of these space elevators being planned by Japanese professors, right? Suggesting almost in a science fiction manner what the future of transportation might be. It looks like science fiction, but then you go to his presentations, and I was lucky enough to watch one of them, and you see that he is, of course, a PhD, and everything that they're proposing is physically possible. So let's see in the near future if this is actually so close or so far. I had a teacher that suggested never mistake a clear view with a short distance. That was Paul Safad Singularity. And I think that is a massive truth. But definitely, I believe that we need to start incorporating all of these possibilities, because otherwise, as I was saying, we're going to be left away. So I'm going to start to finish this intervention here. What I'm suggesting is we have a lot of certainties that we have inherited from the past. We think we know what the city is going to look like. We think we know what mobility might look like in the near future. But my point is, in the next 30 years, we're going to come to some of the biggest transitions that our generation has faced. The long term is just impossible to anticipate. Our intuitions might no longer be reliable, and we need to do some deliberate thinking. So we need to upgrade these visions. The pandemic has given us an amazing opportunity to do so, to rethink and to recreate the future. Where will we work? Looks like we will, or we might work from home. I had been working from home for quite a while, and now we are, after these experiments that we've all run, we are seeing that as Boston Consulting Group was suggesting, these remote working works. So now where do we go from here? Well, this is definitely going to have, and it's having a massive impact on the demand of the residents, right? The curve of the demand is changing. No longer is it so concentrated on the middle of the city. Now we are wanting to go back to the periphery of the city where the quality of life is higher. So companies are starting to suggest, many companies are starting to suggest that they will allow for life, Microsoft or Twitter, etc., the employees to work remotely. And that means, that's pretty clever actually, because that means that Microsoft can be contracting with someone in New Zealand or in the north of Spain or in Portugal, in Lisbon, and without having to actually anchor them to their city or to their base. So is this going to be a reality, or is it just temporary? And where do we live? I mean, if we can do that, if we can work anywhere, where are we going to decide to live? Are we still going to have the sexy of the city, or are we going to go away? And where do we move? I don't know what's going to happen, but definitely we should actively try to project these futures and technology is not enough. We definitely need to incorporate sustainability in those visions of the future. And for this, I'm going to hand it over to Lin.
Thank you very much, Diego. That's a really nice introduction to the future to be. And before we decide what kind of future do we want to be in, let's look at the other side of the mountain. Let's introduce the second part, or the other part of the story, and it's about sustainability. So Diego talked about exponentials, and if we do look at from a history point of view, the human history point of view, and actually all the curves has been exponentials till now, and these are the world population, and these are GDPs, and these are energy use. And here we do not differ what kind of energy source, it's just amount of energy we have used. Which means historically, if we look at from ever there is human species, and almost a quarter of all the goods and service ever made were produced between 10 years. That's after the first decade in the 21st century. Basically, it's after Industrial Revolution, and we started this trend. And growth wasn't really a topic before until the Industrial Revolution. And that's only count into 2010. And now it's 10 years later, and you can imagine that. So if we look at all the trends, from the Earth trend, from the socio-ecological trends, and to the Earth system trends, it's very much aligned. Basically, we have more population. The urban population has grown a lot, and we use more energy, more water, and more paper, and more fertilizer whatsoever. And then the result will be that more carbon dioxide has produced, and the ocean acidification has increased, and tropical forest lost. If we look at the trends, it's the same. So why is that? Because ever since we have our Industrial Revolution, most of the business still use a linear economy model, which is take, make, waste. And more than 90% of whatever we take primarily is from the Earth's crust. And then we make something out of it, and then we consume it, we use it, and after that we throw it away. And also, circular economy, you may have heard it a lot, but it's actually a relatively new thing. So in our way to describe this phenomenon, we use funnel as a metaphor. Basically, what it means is as time goes by, the resources relatively declines because the resources are that much amount. And ever since Big Bang, because the Earth is matter closed. And therefore, we have threat. We're facing threats. First, agriculture and coronavirus. I guess you are feeling the agriculture part. Loss of trust, corruption, and groundwater, and climate change, definitely, and this year. However, there's also opportunity. The crisis, the word for crisis in China is really threats and opportunity together. Wherever there is threats, there will be opportunity. So if we visualize it, this is what happens. And what we want to do as human beings is we want to avoid ourselves, the human society, to bump into the walls of the funnel. Because if we do bump into the walls of the funnel, that's the end of it, right? And then instead we want to navigate through on the pressure of the pressure part, and ideally we come into the open part, and that's when we can find a solution, a restorative and circular sustainable solution. And so where are we? How are we doing now? Honestly, really bad. And this is a research report from Stockholm Resilience Center. And if we look at, so basically the more red you see, it's more the boundary that we have pushed away, the planet boundary. So the Stockholm Resilience Center has categorized the boundary into 9 different categories, and there are 2 that you see is not so red, but the truth is novelty entities with niche chemical, and the truth is we haven't even found a quantified way to measure that how much we have pushed the boundary. That's even more scary. So, and talking about sustainability, I'm pretty sure it's not the first day you heard about it, and most likely you heard about all those too. Well, the zero emissions, life cycle analysis, and clean production, ISO 14,000, etc., cradle to cradle, and different triple bottom line, different things, and SDGs. And I would say, if you do, oh, I cannot really see you. I usually ask, please raise your hand if you think you understand what full sustainability is. Unfortunately, I cannot really see your hand today. So in that case, how do we tackle the problem of sustainability? And the first thing we need to bear in mind is sustainability is a system problem. It's a complex problem, and it definitely requires system thinking. And whenever we resolve a problem of system thinking, we need common language. And why is that? And this is a very, 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 very simple illustration of system. And all different elements are different issues or industries where you can think about it that way. But the thing is, if you do not consider system thinking in tackling this sustainability issue, what happens is you only see the 3 cylinders, and you only see the interaction in between those 3. But the reality is the entire human species system, the Earth, has so much element, and one has linked to all of them more or less. And then what happens is, if you only use reductionism, what happens is once you have tackled some problem and one problem resolved, 10 other problems came up. And the typical example will be the smog in China. And most of the picture of Shanghai looks like above the left corner, right? But quite often in the winter, in reality, it looks down. And the reason is, you may think it's simply because we have more car, but however, it's not really only more car. And it really is partly caused by tackle other problem, the problem of acid rain. And most of the, as you know, most of the energy source in China comes from coal, and then we do release sulfur to the air, and then we have acid rain problem. And then the environment department put on a KPI of how much percentage of the sulfur that you are allowed to send if you are an energy company. And then the energy company around 10 years ago start importing German technologies to reduce that sulfur. And it's very, very easy principles and way to reduce them. And first, they put the emission before they emit it to the air. They put it through steam to let it have some chemical reaction and generate some very basic chemical raw materials. However, in order to enable the full reaction of sulfur, and you have to have excessive amount of steam, water. And what happens is, whenever this goes out, when the emission goes out from the steam, it's become heavier, the dense has increased. And then what happens is, the emission used to be able to increase to 100 meters high, for example, but then after it's heavier, it can only goes up to 50 meters high. And coupled with the fact that we have more cars, and then everything is more or less capped in. That's the problem of having that's the reason of smog, which is our solution actually partly from tackle another problem. But however, in the German technology, there's reheating. to basically remove the excessive steam again, we did not, most of our generators did not really import that section. It's because our KPI was only on how much, the percentage of your sulfur. So that's the typical result of reductionism. In that case, what we need to do, what we need to have is structured overview when you tackle a sustainability problem, that you look over the entire system and understand how the system is working. And in terms of common language, which we just talk about one, which is our way of describe the problem is a funnel. And also for sustainability principles will be another, our common language of describe this, what full sustainability is. So this is our system. And how does it work? And then we need to understand the cycles of the natures. Basically, if we look at Earth's system, we have a closed system for matter. Nothing disappears and everything disperses. But we have it open for energy. And within these cycles of nature, there are two really cycles. One is called biosphere. It's above, and you feel it every day. It's seasons, right? And one is lithosphere, which is a slow geological cycles. And without humans disruption, without humans interfering, there will be only volcano eruptions and weathering, which will bring out matters from the lithosphere to the biosphere. However, with us in, that is a different story. So this is the Earth, and that's us in the middle. And that's our society. So how did we actually interfere those cycles? First, we bring out relatively large amount of flows and materials onto the Earth's crust, and either we use it or we leave it there, or we leave it after we use it. Not only that, the second way is we also combine small molecules into big molecules, and that's called chemicals. So which means we introduce foreign matters, foreign stuff to the nature, which the nature has a hard time to digest. And in both of the cases, the first way and second way, we accumulate that into the nature. And the third way is we also physically inhibit nature's ability to run cycles, such as we do fish, which is fine. But if you overfish, then the ability for nature itself to cycle will be slowed down. And also the rainforest, if you cut it down too much, which you do inhibit the nature's ability to restore itself. And not only those three is about environment. And also we have the fourth way of interfering with the cycles. And we quite often create barriers to other people to meet their basic needs worldwide. And then you may ask, okay, what is people's basic needs? Okay. So there are many theories about basic needs, and this is the theory we use. It's from Max Neef. It's an economist that has research project on why people feel more happy in Bhutan. And understand those four ways of how do humans interfere with the cycles. And here comes the four sustainability principles. Basically, we define sustainability not from an angle of what you need to do or what you should do. And instead, we define what full sustainability is from an angle of what you are not supposed to do, what you should not do. And what you can do is the room for innovation and what you should not do also give you room for improvement. And it's certainly okay of doing what you're not supposed to do. Pretty much everyone does. So then you may ask, so what? And the point is really not about those principles. It's more about how do we use them. So we call it creativity within constraints. And that's when you paint the picture of your future, and you need to make sure that your future is lying within the 4 principles. And also we do it in a way to access all the performance of gaps across the entire value chain. That's how do we make sure the system thinking is still applied here. And for example, we talked about mobilities, and for having mobilities, we cannot avoid talking about cars. No matter in the future, for having cars, certainly it do fulfill lots of human needs. It's not only the substance, it's the freedom, etc. However, what happens is when we fulfill our needs, we also need to make it within the nature's limit. So taking a car from the raw material and to the production and distribution, use and after use, for each of the stages on the value chain, there are violations for the principles, and those are the gaps we need to close. So whatever you do, you put your vision into sustainability principles and make sure it's fully aligned. And then you come back to the future, come back to the current situation, and then we call it baselining. And basically to analyze, how are you violating the principles now? And those are the gaps. In between these are the gaps you need to close. And exponential technology certainly can play an important role in closing the gaps. And knowing the gap, which allow you to have creative solutions, and those you don't need to basically backcast from principles. You don't need to really lock yourself into one solutions. And no one can really implement everything at the same time. So the D step, you need to decide on priorities. And also, does it really, when you decide on priorities, there are 3 questions at least you need to ask. First, does it move us to the right direction? It's only if you answer yes, then you come to the second question. Is it more flexible platform? And it's only if you say yes, then it goes to the third question. Is it enough ROI? So basically, sustainable principles and backcasting from the principles is our way of doing sustainability planning, strategic planning. And also we have many other tools, which I will not talk about today. So I hope I did not, or we did not confuse you too much. And then I will introduce, since it's, it's after 7 already. I will introduce the a little small assignment that we prepared today. So you're going to do ABCD backcasting from vision. And what you need to envision is the future of sustainable mobility. You can do it in urban city setup. You can do it in general, or you can also choose to have a specific areas or aspect or consideration. It can be, for example, it can be mobility for people. You can also choose to work on mobility of goods, or you can also choose to work on public transportation for tourism purpose. And after that, what you should do is you baseline the existing system, how currently whatever you are trying to work on is doing, how the current system is violating the principles, and what's the strengths and what's the weakness. Then after that, this is the gap you want to close. And then the third, the C step is to come up with smart, active solutions and bring us forward to your vision. It doesn't have to be one step to close the gap entirely, and no one, actually, almost no solution does that. It can, as long as it one step bring us further, that's fine. And then D step is what activities that you can do today or tomorrow, and basically prioritize them a bit. If you find the time is short, and you can put down D step, but if it's okay to find if you feel that you have enough time, then do the entire ABCD. And I can give you an example. And this, for example, this can be your vision. If you, let's say, if you choose to work from a personal mobility point of view, then this vision can be freedom to move in a personal, safe, sustainable way. And then then this will become your vision, and then be a little bit more specific on the principle. And then you go back on currently. I mean, this the easiest thing to imagine is if you work in a car company, this will be your vision. And then you go back to the current car system. How is it right now? And then the C step is, how do I see different movement that I can bring myself there? And the D step is, how do I prioritize? So some tips, please take at least 5 minutes. Take 5 minutes to, within your group, to propose, discuss, and agree on the scope that you want to work. It's more of what issue and what perspective that you want to apply this on. And when you start working on ABCD, and some tips, when you envision the scope, you can think from the core purpose and core value and core philosophy a bit, so to just basically make it easier for you. And also, when you have the assess the current situation, the B step, think from the entire value chain and current situation now, and to make it easier, smoother for you. So let's see, how much time do we have? I will put on the principles again, and I will put on the human needs also. So don't worry about that. And let's just work out the time. Now is we have 45 minutes. Let's say you guys take 25 minutes thinking, and maybe 20 minutes imposing, and maybe, how many are we now? Can somebody type to me? How many are we right now? $18, okay. If we're 18, maybe, oh, okay, 15 soon. But anyway, let's take 5 groups. Sorry, three. Let's take 3 groups. Antonio, can you get the participants to the breakout rooms later? And let's take 3 groups, and then we take 25 minutes doing the assignment, including thinking or whatever. And then we take 20 minutes to each of you present something back. And then we should be able to give you some feedback after that, before we end today's session. Is that fine? Okay, I will put on these slides again, so don't worry. And this, please take a picture of these, everyone, because this will be the template that you work on. And when you present, you can simply use text. And if you want to make it fancy, so be it. If not, that's still fine with us. So, and then I will go back to the assignment as well. And please take a photo of this also. And I will go back, after this, I will go back to, this is some tips if you want. And now I'm going back to the principles. Okay. So these are the principles. And these are the humanese. And if you want to choose working from humanese point of view, make sure that you fulfill some needs, but also not violate other principles. Diego?
Hi.
Okay.
Yes, Lin, I was suggesting, since there is actually 4 people only, plus 4 of us in Planetiers, I suggest they can stick here. They can remain in this very forum instead of creating a breakout room, and work on this platform. We can give them access to everything, so they can work here, and we'll reconcile here in 25 minutes.
Okay. How do I unmute everyone?
So, Christiana, it looks like this is going to be just you. So if you want to remain with us, which we very much appreciate, maybe what we can do is change a little bit the scheme, and let's talk about what potential doubts you might have after our presentations, what interesting insights you believe you get out of it, and how we can help you apply in your context these logic and these exercises, or whatever you want.
So what I have tried before is to do not start with lecture, and start with small breakout and let them talk to each other first. And then it seems working better. And also the breakout rooms are key, because it should not be in big groups. It should be around 3. So they do have an opportunity to really get around when they're in small rooms. They have questions. Hello.
Yes, I'm unmuted.
Oh, wow. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So for Sonia, can you, even it is like a lab, let's make it, this is like a living lab. Can I make you, I turn your video on, or is not?
Yes, I can do it.
I'd like to have your feedback. You were in the beginning?
No, I just entered, and actually I only have 20 minutes, so I was checking what we were doing actually.
Okay.
That's good.
What we're doing, we are trying to tackle problems or get company, organization, whosoever to be future fit. And we believe to be future fit, we need to consider 2 sides of the mountain. One side is sustainability. The other side is digitalization and exponential technologies. And we were talking about how to basically make these 2 sides. How do you actually consider that 2 sides in your future and set to be disruptive?
I have no idea. I joined to learn, actually. So I'm a veterinarian, I'm a researcher and a conservationist. And yeah, I do research with Asian elephants for the last 5 years of my life. And but I wish to understand a bit more of like how sustainability can be applied to my field, like research. So that's why I joined, to learn.
That's a good question. How sustainability can be applied in research field? That's actually, I actually haven't really thought about from this angle, because most of the time I think about doing research in sustainability, not really vice versa. But you said you worked with elephant in Asia?
Yes, I work with Asian elephant while in Europe, but I was also in Thailand for a specific research. So we wanted to compare the European elephant with the Asian elephant. Some physiological values like coagulation times and some veterinary needs that we have. Because so for us, it's important that we understand the value of elephants in the ecosystem. So they are called umbrella species. By protecting elephants, you're protecting a lot of huge amount of other species. Elephants are like responsible to open like water puddle. When the rainy season is gone, they manage to dig with their tusks and keep water for longer for other animals to drink. And they also like spread a lot of seeds for trees, so they're very important in the ecosystem in Africa.
That's great to know, because actually when we talk about sustainability in a longer span, not like 1 hour speech or something, we tell people that biology diversity is very important, because almost all the species that play a role in the cycle itself. And honestly, personally, I give the examples of the annoying animals like flies, or why they actually also contribute in the cycles. And I personally haven't really thought about the contribution of elephants until you talk about it.
No, they are a very good example, and they are considered like a landscape architect, because they really change like the plant. They make huge migratory paths with their herds, and like their poo basically is full of seeds, and what they are doing is like they are spreading a huge amount of different types of plants and nutrients that animals will use afterwards. And by protecting elephants, you're protecting a lot of other species like under it, until the little beetle, until the little ant. And so if they do disappear, like who is gonna like go and walk around and plant the seeds as they walk through? And also it goes a bit like the panda, they are charismatic species, and as you protect them, maybe not many people like to protect mosquitoes, although they also have their importance in our
please
like
ecosystem on that. Mosquitoes.
Yes.
So what is besides that they are feed to some other insect, what else importance do they have?
Well, they feed the spiders, and the spiders feed la la la, and la 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 will feed la la la.
So is there anything else except food chain?
Okay, let me think. It's bad because actually mosquitoes, normally we don't really appreciate them, but
yeah, we're putting you in a position to advocate for mosquitoes, which is pretty weird, right?
Well, it goes like that. Imagine like there is a mosquito that is natural to that environment, right? So that means like there is a balance between the number of mosquitoes and spiders and birds that eat them. If that mosquito disappears, probably a new invasive species of mosquitoes will come, and that might bring diseases that this area is not used to deal with. So, for example, we have a lot of like invasive species that compete with the species that were naturally there. Like, for example, we have the ladybugs. So the ladybugs in Portugal, they are bio alert. So when you see a lot of ladybugs, the red ones with the black spots, you know that there is good atmospheric air, that the air is not polluted, and so on. And now we have an invasive species, which is the Asian ladybug. She's orange skin and a red blue dot, black dots, and they are really like overcoming the red ones, the natural ones of this place. So what they are doing basically is shifting one species to the other. And what we used to have like as a basic like alert system for us to know that is it polluted or not. Now we have a species that comes from a totally different climate coming to our land. So how do we know like that something that is normally in Asia with this type of humidity and temperature is adapting so good now in Portugal? Of course, it's climate change, but then we know that our own species, natural species, are dying, and therefore we are not being able to maintain, like, it's not good. So mosquitoes, although they are normally like not really species that we enjoy, of course they do have theirs, like very important, because if these mosquitoes that belong to that country, that continent, disappear, there will be coming new mosquitoes to substitute them in the ecosystem, and they could be malaria mosquitoes, they could be, you know, really other species of insects that carry diseases that we did not used to have, because there is always a balance.
So Sonia, is there, you're talking about elephants in Thailand and here the ladybugs in Portugal. Do you have a specific field of activity? And there's 3 questions on the row. If you do, what is the main limitation you're facing regarding research to see if from the sustainable and moreover from the exponentiality, we can try to offer some potential solutions? And more specifically, if you have a question in your field, where do you ask it? So 3 questions. Is there any specific field? What are the main limitations and where would you ask for a question?
So my specific field, I work in institute that does research only for zoo and wildlife. It's the Leibniz Institute for Zoo and Wildlife in Berlin, although I'm Portuguese. And so I work in the reproduction department, and we do reproduction of wild species. So basically rhinos, elephants, artificial insemination, because it's really hard, you know, like to bring the bulls and the females together in a zoo scenario, and we have to transport them. So we basically do what it's being done for humans in fertility. So it's to help the conservation of endangered species by collecting semen and inseminating the females. It goes a bit like that. And I'm working at the moment, yeah, okay. In general, I do wildlife conservation research. Okay.
So what is your challenge?
So the challenge at the moment, okay, there we have different ones. So for sure, the speed, the rate of extinction is going way too fast for our technology capacity to be able to. So for example, my boss, Thomas Hildebrand, is trying to save, maybe you already heard of it, the northern, the southern, the white, northern white rhino. So there is only 2 females left of this rhino in Kenya. The male died, and the 2 females are mother and daughter. So they are also like linked genetically. And what they were able to do was to collect the semen of this male before he died. And now they are trying to collect eggs of these females before they also die. And they are trying to keep the species alive by using like other species of rhinos as belly renters, you know, to keep on producing this species, because once it's gone, it's going to be gone for good. And so like
they don't reproduce naturally in a artificial state, is that it?
Yeah, they were, yes, they were too few, and with you know, there is a lot of human animal conflicts. So they invade, for example, the property. The poaching is the worst one, of course, right? They are rhinos, they poach them for their horns. And once they started protecting them, there were like 6 rhinos of this species. They were way too few. And now they had a lot of rangers that were patrolling them 24 hours. But still, you know, like women, rhinos and elephants, when they don't mate early, they start having like fertility problems. Like women, we start having like uterine cysts or ovarian cysts. And so because they are quite old and never had the first calving, then they start having like problems in getting pregnant. But we can get the eggs from them and try to make like new babies that one day will repopulate the rhino species of this one. So yes, they were not enough.
I was
Let
going
me
to say,
know.
yeah, I remember recently we were talking about, in the context of health, we were talking about how effective some virtual reality therapies seem to be in some patients. Like there's a lot of pathologies in which they are applying virtual reality. And it just crossed my mind the idea that maybe there's some experiment regarding virtual reality in animals, like having animals like in a virtual reality setting to see if they could change the perception that they have of their immediate space, and ideally, solve that problem of a reproduction in a urban zoo context. That could be quite interesting too.
That's super interesting. Yes, I believe that works more for humans, because I think like the power of our belief is stronger than our genetics itself. So, or what you're telling me is like people see and they start like somehow with epigenetics, right? With the outside environment, they start believing that they can heal, they can. So I think that's the problem when it comes to animals, because there are many animals that we still don't know how many colors they see, and in deepness, like like every animal.
Of course.
It's hard because, for example, you have the prey and the predators, and the prey, like us, have their eyes focused, like like lions and tigers. But for example, the prey, like gazelles and cows, they have their eyes on the side, right? Because, and also, so that means that the deepness that they can see, the focus that they can do is also different. It would be super interesting, but I think we might face some difficulties in there. Also, like we don't know, we know like some species only see, for example, blue and yellow, and other species black and white. And we know that the eagle can focus on purpose, like if they have a camera in their eyes. But I don't know. And also is also yeah. Another thing is we are like self-conscious animals, right? Like we know that by like being nice and talking nice, that we are creating an empathy on the other side, that our way of. So I don't know if animals know this, if they imagine they are seeing themselves looking at a huge, beautiful savanna, and if they would
when they talk,
I don't know.
when they talk to each other, there naturally is the empathy to each other, right?
Yes, yes,
right.
True, but I don't know.
They talk their languages.
I just what I'm wondering, that's why it's interesting, and I'm curious, right? I'm a researcher, and I think that's like very interesting. Like, do they have the perception, like, hey, something is wrong with you. Let's try to make you feel nice again, or let's try to solve this physiological problem that you're having, Like, we can tell a woman, like, I'm sorry, you have to go to the gynecologist, and now you have to open your legs. We have to check it out just to see if everything is okay with you. I don't know, like, until what deepness can we tell an animal, you're very sick, let us help you, or please observe this, and it's gonna be good for you in the future, that's. But it's super interesting. But you know what?
I remember being recently in a conference, in Masters on Robots conference. I was speaker there, and there was another speaker. I'm trying to find the name of him, that was precisely studying empathy. He was applying artificial intelligence to reduce the communication patterns from plants and to translate them into some simplified version of communication messages. And he was also, and I know because I talked to him about it, especially considering or exploring this idea of empathy with animals. And my suggestion was, if you hack this, probably our consumption patterns will change immediately, as we can empathize with our prey, right? Or with our hamburger, right?
Yes.
But I was wondering to what extent a combination of virtual reality plus these empathy measuring mechanisms could be about. I mean, of course, these are long shot. It is like a crazy idea.
That's when it all starts with the
absolutely. Because maybe there's other people that are considering this already and putting the pieces together, or in your case, putting the canvas for their experiment to be run could be possible.
Yes, there is also, like, you made me think now of something that is really interesting, that is called interspecies communicator. So there are people that can actually, let's say, talk to animals, but without verbalizing. So what they defend, which is true, is like words is the worst way of communicating, right? Like we have different countries with different like languages, but actually like you can really look, and if we are in presence, you can feel that I'm sad, or you can feel that I'm happy. I don't even have to tell you anything, right? So she says like she can transmit emotions to the animals and receive emotions from the animals, like we can do between humans, that she can also feel it through it. And so she had a lot of situations that she helped animals that would change from zoos, or to make them understand why they were there, because they also had doubts and they could not understand why are humans doing that. It's super interesting. There is a video now I would suggest you to see. It's called the Interspecies Communicator. It's Anna. I think she's American, but she lived a lot in South Africa, and she can really like, you know, in the beginning, like you have doubts, but then she starts doing so many things and getting so many like answers from the animals that you really start doubting, like, how can she know this, you know? And so I think also combining that, it's everything like not scientific proven, right? And
Yeah, that is the beginning of science, as you mentioned it, of course.
yes, and it's
Trial
going
and
to
error.
take years until science can actually prove, or people start believing that feeling is also as a good sense as watching and tasting and smelling. If you can feel feelings, you cannot deny them. So they can be used also as a tool. But until scientists accept this, it's gonna take a while. Like.
It's going to take a while. So from the exponential part, there is so the bet here, the fundamental bet was we're going to able to combine the sustainability principles with super fast growth hacking mechanisms that we are seeing in unicorns to leverage abundances of data, abundances of information, abundances of talent, of energy, etc., and to combine them into a formula that allows us to reach sustainable impact at scale. So I am more, I'll be more knowledgeable of the exponential part, and that's why I'm trying to offer you some value out of this. There's one of the attributes that we use in the EXO world is the social attribute that actually is all about working more efficiently. And I understand that research in general works in silos. So you guys, there is forums, there's a lot of platforms that you're already using, like ResearchGate, or all of these publications that you might be accustomed to use, but still you have a system of incentive that is all about publishing first. So there's not so much sharing, or at least not the way that we could be doing it. Actually, the internet was conceived to create a bidirectional communication of knowledge. And now I'm seeing pop up not only the traditional tools that everybody's using, like the Slacks and the Google Drives and all that, but I'm seeing a new evolution of a tool that is creating, like, I would even say a cult, exaggerated way of saying that there is early adopters that are loving it, and I am among them. The tool is called Rome Research, and it is a system of research that doesn't impose any kind of hierarchy on the knowledge. So if Sonia is researching for, the I know this variable of the empathy, and Lin is doing her own research on empathy, we can leverage each other's knowledge and data collections into a shared graph that then we can articulate and then translate into whatever hierarchy or narrative we want. I am fascinated about this because I'm seeing that all of the research that I do typically is stored in a file, stored in a document, in a Google Drive, in a Word document, in a presentation, and it's very, very hard to recuperate that knowledge. I mean, you need to remember about its existence. What ROM does is it proposes when it might be relevant automatically by means of using, these it's pretty simple actually. Every relevant concept
Sorry, can you spell it for me?
Yes.
ROM, R-O-A-M or room?
Yes, ROM, R-O-A-M, okay. ROM Research.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know this is a weird recommendation, but I am really convinced that this is going to create a massive difference, and it is a social attribute, right? It's an attribute of that allows us to leverage the collective intelligence in the fields of research. I understand that you guys are much more purpose and passion driven than any others, probably. And so that mechanism for effective sharing might be easier if you find the right tools. Take a look at this one, because hopefully you will like it.
Yeah, we'll take a look. So what I really feel, and you were asking me before, like the challenges or difficulties that I face. So definitely it's because conservation is like the least, not the least, but not one of the most priorities for governments to support financially. So most of the conservation money comes from the zoos, actually, with the entrance of people. So there, it's quite hard, like, to keep on having like a stable job. You know, you get a contract for 1 year, then 6 months, 1 year, 6 months, and it's always like by project based that you have to take everything, and you are always applying for help. And that really is what costs, like, makes me suffer the most, and that's what makes me want to somehow. And so, like, as a vet, we are taught like to dedicate ourselves to treat animals or to help others, but we are not really treated like in business, you know. And so I really find it hard to do conservation without needing to keep on applying for funds. And that's why, like, now I'm doing a lot of these, like, from PhD to research entrepreneurs, and I'm trying to understand a bit more of this. That's also why I joined, you know, how can I do it like sustainable way, like good for the environment, but still proficient enough that you can live from it and make good results and bring more.
So yeah, let me tell you a little bit about what we do. I'm coming from the other side of the two mountain. So what we do in the natural step is basically what I have heard from you. It's a typical symptom of unsustainability, right? So whatever, it's a human's behavior and our business practice, maybe not only social practice, has caused basically the result of your activity or the need of your activity. If we are all living in a perfectly sustainable world, then we don't really need to conserve, but you can still study them and you can still research them, but we don't need to be so nervous about their reproduction, right? So, but unfortunately, this is actually one of the very few moments in my life I actually feel philanthropy has a value in the sustainable growth as well. But obviously, whatever you have experienced is the result of human species and sustainability, and what my organization is trying to help different business to do is basically find out fundamentally what's wrong with your unsustainable behavior, and then analyze that, what's the root cause, and then push them through the innovation to become more sustainable, right? But in your specific case, because you do conservation and it's not really on large scale, so I don't really think we even need to analyze your behavior specifically against principles, because you are certainly trying to get it back to be more sustainable. But along with what Diego has said, because we are also trying to see how exponential technologies can help you to scale it up. And you just mentioned second challenges, the way I see it. First, basically the species, they stink too fast, and that I take that as my fault. Obviously I haven't really managed to be more impactful faster, and then that's where basically lead all of us to this situation that there are more species dying. But also what I heard from you is that you are lacking of fund, but also together with what you are doing, I think it's really fun in the field. Have you ever think about have a live stream of what you do when you are in the field and use it as education?
Yeah, we have a lot of people that do it.
Sorry?
I think my problem is more not, yes, like you were saying, is not that I'm not a sustainable like mindset. I think if humans are not sustained, then I cannot do.
No.
Yes, like to share more the work I do, like to captivate people. That's what you mean?
I more meant that you use your daily field work and video it, or even live stream it as part of revenue income support your research?
Yeah, no, we cannot do it because, you know, like zoos are private institutions. Yeah, and there are many things like vets do and zoos do that's the common people don't understand or don't accept. So every time like you film a zoo in the background, of course, like you're kind of prepared to share this with the normal public. So there are a lot of activists that are against zoos and this and that. So it's not an easy task. I mean, there are some like documentaries of Dr. Phil or Dr. Nanana, and he films in the zoo. It's not the thing is, I understand like your point, but it would be hard for me just to get like money source from that. Also,
no, it's fine. This is your challenge. If you have such challenge, it's a challenge. And me and Diego, we're here to try to help you to come up with more solutions instead of saying that you are wrong. But Diego, hearing from her, suddenly I feel maybe we should change the business model of zoo or, you know, any type of this kind of conservation and research work. In that case, because what me and Diego we do, we also talk about abundance and scarcity in your work. Obviously, your animals are really in the scarce situation, but do you find something abundance? Knowledge-wise, is probably not that abundance neither, but is there anything?
Yeah, it's hard for me to say because, you know, like, yeah, this is I'm not sure like I will answer to you correctly, but for example, like this is the only service that you get paid and you get results 5 years later, and the results are only knowledge. You know, they're not palpable. So people also don't really, you know.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I have the impulsive habitude of muting myself after speaking. Sorry. So one of the things that I was thinking of while you were speaking about the business model of nature, if you want, was precisely the case of biomimicry. There's this amazing website held by Biomimicry Institute that is called Ask Nature. It's called asknature.org. And what they did there at the beginning, I remember because I was to some extent part of that effort as a specialist in biomimicry that I was certified with them. They were trying to, they're exploring the possibility of assigning a specific value to the wonders or to the insight that they got from nature. For example, if you find the inspiration from the elephant or from the ladybug in this field, we're going to put it in this website for any innovator in the world to leverage it. But what we're going to do is we're going to have anybody that is inspired on them pay a little bit of a return to the conservation of that species. So I was completely like, I loved the approach. I mean, I understand it's really complicated to actually land it, but it makes a lot of sense. Is try to, because the problem I understand is a lack of incentive and a lack of metrics, right? You were saying that your metrics only are visible 5 years afterwards. And probably the problem is that there is no, people do not empathize or do not really understand the severity of the problems that you're dealing with because they do not seem to impact our reality in a first level. I mean, there's, you need an abstract capability of abstract thinking or system thinking that is not so obvious. So any visualization tool that you could put in place in order to create those correlations between your work or the species and the effect that it could have on us, that could be very beneficiary. And in that sense, the asknature.org approach could, if scaled, could work. I believe that site is still owned by Biomimicry Institute, but I would assume at some point Autodesk or some other tool software developer or Adobe could have interest on it, and if that was the case, as part of their social responsibility or purpose of companies, you know, it could be an easy channel to receive funding. Take a look at it because it's. I mean, even if
I'm checking it, looks good.
Thank you. Also, can you please write down your I mean the how do we contact you later? Because I think what you do.
Yeah, what do you do? My email with you.
It's about biology diversity, and there are a bunch of companies in China screaming they want to work with biology diversity, and I think they don't really know how to start.
Mm.
And then I see a perfect starting
Awesome.
point.
Oh,
Well, I'm
really amazing that we are that we are making things happen alive.
I can show you also my, if I find the my like, I don't have a personal website, but the website of my institutes that you can see my department and everything. I don't know.
Send an email or
But so maybe actually I had no idea, you know, I thought I was joining a Zoom where people were doing talks. So I had no idea what I came from. I was like clicking in the Planetiers like, oh, this sounds interesting. And so I was not expecting to talk. I thought you were doing some talks, you know, some presentation.
You enjoyed your
We did, but you were late.
Oopsie.
Just kidding, just kidding.
But at least we enjoyed hearing you
Absolutely.
and having a
Absolutely. Very
conversation.
It's always good that I work. Imagine if I would only work with mosquitoes. Oh my God.
I was explaining to Lin and Diego that the Portuguese are not so shy. So it's the proof.
Yeah, please. I think there's one key point is we should not turn off their videos, because it's great feedback for the speaker as well by seeing people.
Yes. What can we, Lin? We need to close. Sonia is. Have you shared, Sonia?
I will share my email because I cannot find it now in this computer.
Okay.
But
Okay, I can type you my email address so you can find me later.
I will put also mine here.
okay.
Sonia, because as Planeteers, we are very interested in interesting people, in particular in Portugal, starting with Portugal.
Perfect.
Okay, so you have it there, Vasconcelos, okay?
Okay.
So Diego, Lin, Vasconcelos. Okay, Antonio, that's my name. Thanks a lot, Sonia.
Thank you.
For your support, for your fantastic dialogue, improbable talk. Very good. The world, I think, is arriving to a moment in which the momentum is being created for what you think is not on the agenda. Has to be more and more. And so hopefully it's getting on the agenda very quickly.
Yes, and the name is Antonio, yes?
Antonio, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much. This was really unexpected. I'm happy that I get to meet you all, Diego and Antonio.
Okay, Lin and Diego, how can we debrief?
I actually need to go right now, if you don't mind. So maybe we can have either an email cross or something afterwards.
Email cross, yes. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. See you later. Bye.
Bye.